All right, welcome back to the vlog, folks. Today I have a really cool, exciting video that I'm gonna be doing. Exciting for me, hopefully for you, but I have actually had a problem with this Jeep Gladiator that I haven't talked about that my old Jeep did not have. And that is, I did not get auxiliary switches with my new Gladiator. And so what I'm gonna be doing today is I'm gonna be fixing that problem with a solution that does not have any holes in the dashboard for that switches. And I'm not gonna have any wiring run from inside the engine bay where it hooks up to the battery into the cab. So the solution comes after much research. I did not wanna have wires coming in from the engine bay into the cab. I did not wanna have to drill holes in my dash, and I did not want to have any small switch systems where I am limited on how many accessories I can add. And so the perfect solution after much research was the trigger system offered by Oracle Lighting. So thanks to them, we've got one. We are going to be installing it on the Jeep, and I'm gonna show you how easy it is to install. And then we're gonna hook it up to my yellow fog lights, which I had on my old Jeep that I have not been able to equip on this one because I don't have those switches. So stay tuned, this is gonna be really exciting. I have been waiting for this day, and I picked the coldest day in Ohio to do it, which tells you how excited I am to get this thing done. So let's jump into it. All right, folks, so I am basically prepping my electrical toolbox kit here that I typically use for all my wiring projects. But I did a quick sneak peek last night. If you couldn't tell, the box is already open. And I'm not gonna really need much of this. You're gonna need some crimpers, and that's pretty much it. Because Oracle does a fantastic job with all of the accessories and wiring that you're gonna need with this trigger kit. It comes with it. So as I dive into the box here, this is really cool. The switch panel that will go in the pre-mounted bracket is pretty sweet. Switches feel pretty awesome. And of course, they give you a baggie of goodies, basic hardware, things like that, instructions, and some really cool stickers to put over those switches so you understand which switch goes to what in the event that you forget. It's nice little touches, you know? Of course, this is gonna be our mounting bracket, which we'll show you here in a second. And if I'm being honest, guys, when I looked at all of the different switches, this is the piece that I think sold it for me outside of the fact that I don't have to wire it into the cab. But this is the trim panel piece that they've created or added to this box that you basically put into where your SOS switches are. And your switches will sit right here on front. And so you can see how seamless that will look. You're not drilling holes in. You're not putting things on that phone mount holder that you might have set up. This is just slick. If someone were to jump in the Jeep and have never been in one before, they would think this came standard from the Jeep, and that's what I was looking for. This piece right here, guys. And then the actual Bertha, the switches themselves. So one thing I wasn't sure is it's really nice. They give you plug and play connectors to your accessories, but these are different 2-pin connectors. So do they give you 2-pin wiring harnesses to hook up to those accessories? The answer is yes, they do. So you don't have to do any of that wiring to your accessories. They've already given you those 2 pins to connect into the trigger and then the leads to go to your accessory, which is awesome. Again, if I could do it, you can do it. All right, and so as I'm getting the Jeep prepped, one of the things I mentioned was there's no wires being wired into the cab. And so the question becomes, how does the trigger system inside communicate with the system inside where your switches are? And the bottom line is it's a Bluetooth RF signal. And so that's what's really cool and makes this system different than all the other ones I researched, is there's no wiring into the cab. You just install it, and that RF signal to your switches is what controls them. And so you can wire those switches in, or you could use a battery. I'm personally gonna use a battery, but that to me makes it so much more easier to install. Just throw that in there. All right, so the first step is gonna be mounting the trigger system itself to the mounting bracket with the 4 bolts and nuts that they provided. All right, so with this securely mounted on here, the next thing that we're gonna do is crimp these connectors on to the red and black leads that we'll use to our power and ground. Alrighty, so now that we got these 2 connected and heat shrinked, let's go ahead and put this sucker onto the Jeep and we'll show you where that goes. All right, so you can see the trigger system sitting right here. These 2 will flip it around and they will bolt into this bolt, and then Oracle provides you another 10mm bolt to thread into this spot right here. So in theory, once everything's bolted in, this is what it will look like in terms of a dry mock-up, which looks pretty awesome if I'm being honest. All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing installed. And man, that looks really good. Sits in nice, sits in high. You can run your wiring to the left and to the right, just like if you did have aux switches from the factory. Those leads sit right here, so this is awesome. And then of course we have our leads that go to the battery right here. So let's go ahead and start wiring those up. Alrighty, so with these we have the ground, tying to the ground, positive, going to the positive of the battery. This is your kill switch, so you could tie this into the ignition fuse, or you could tie directly into the positive if you're a daily driver, which is what I'm gonna do. All right, so we got the trigger system installed and wired in. Now all we need to do is hook it up to our auxiliary fog lights that we have and give it a test before we install everything into the trim panel above the rear view mirror. But let's give you a quick look at what it looks like right now compared to what you would get with the Jeep. Here's the system. Here's all your leads to your auxiliary items that you're going to be hooking up to it. This will get cleaned up after we've done a test. And of course, it sits nicely where your Jeep auxiliary switch leads come to. So in terms of wiring and all of that stuff, that comes out easy. If you don't need these leads, you can easily tuck them down just like you would if you had those Jeep auxiliary switches. Here's how you do a quick test to make sure your wiring is connected and receiving power like it should be. Simply press these buttons and notice that the lights are coming on. Run your way through all 6 of them. And as you can see, we got blue lights for all, so we know we have power. The trigger system is working. Now let's get it hooked up to those auxiliary fog lights. All right, so you can see here that we have the 1 switch wire out and connected right up here. I just pulled it out to illustrate its connection, but it is run back here to these fog lights. And to give it a quick test, all you got to do is press the 1 button here, which I'm going to show you the lights. We have them working. So overall, the install of the trigger and the wiring is super easy. The hardest part for me was really running my auxiliary lights and its wiring to the connector here, but that's because I was doing a lot of splicing between my 2 lights into the phenomenal Oracle lights harnesses that they provide you. So you have 6 harnesses that they give you to a red and black lead, and then obviously depending on what you're powering, you can run them to the specific type of amperage circuit you need. So awesome job with the control system here. Now let's jump into the cab and install the actual switches into that trim panel. All right, real quick guys, I had to take a break. It was freezing outside, but the next step was something I could do inside briefly. And so I did that real quick and I'll walk you through what I did. Of course, I've got my little helper here. Say hi, Margot. And she was helping me put together basically this switch system. So what we've got here is the switches up front. They take 2 2032 batteries. Show them, Margot. And you basically operate the switches just like this. And you can see those lights pop up in the back. There is an option to hardwire in the back, but me personally, I'm just not a fan of doing the hardwiring in. I like to leave my factory harnesses just as they are, try not to tap into them very much, if at all. And so for me, the batteries are gonna work just perfectly. I think the only thing that wiring in gives you is a backlight to those lights, which is pretty nice, but it's not something that's worth it to me to wire into my factory harness for. So that being said, we did do a test. It's daylight, it looks awesome. I'm gonna wait a little bit to do a night shot for you guys and show you exactly what they look like. But we're gonna go ahead and jump in and put that trim piece into place and show you how that process looks here in just a second. But yeah, overall, the install of that was pretty easy. Figuring out which way the batteries went, positive or negative, was a difficulty, but it didn't take very long to figure it out. You like it, Margot? Woo! The other thing I did want to bring up while I'm inside and not outside, I'll demo it outside, but what we've got is the app that the trigger system works off of. So you can actually use your phone to work on your lights. And it's pretty cool because if you don't want to use your switch, or if you want to add some features like strobe, things like that, the app is really cool. So I'll kind of show you some demo of that tonight when it's a little bit darker. But it is pretty cool that the system does connect to an app and you can use that to turn on and turn off the lights. So that's pretty cool that they have an app, but I prefer having the switches in the Jeep for when we're on the road. All right, so we're in the Jeep. All we need to do is pull down this trim panel, pull out this SOS bar and unplug it, and then we'll be able to hook our new trigger mount that Oracle has to this and then be able to snap it back in place. All right, and just pulling down pretty firmly, but being graceful about it, releases this entire trim piece. And that's exactly what we need. We need to get these metal clips basically removed, and that'll free up this SOS button that we'll be able to remove, unplug from its wiring harness, and then put into ours. What's hard to see up there, and if you're doing this not in the winter and you can take your freedom panels off, it'll be a little bit easier. What there are these 4 silver tabs that you need to depress to get this thing out. and that's the hardest thing to see and maneuver with your freedom paddles on. So that being said, if you do this in the summer / not the winter, it's a lot easier. I had to pop my freedom paddles off and freeze my face off for a second, but it was worth it. So you've got this, and you can basically slide this bad boy right in there, and then you're able to hook it right back up and plug it in. All right, so we've basically got this entire setup here, good to go. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna remove these switches real quick. I'm gonna hook the back end into the trim panel underneath the windshield, and then we're gonna pull it forward and it should pop right in. And finally, I will say that was a bit tough fitting this trim piece in, but it is doable. This is in, it looks really good. It may need a little bit of 3M tape on the inside just to hold it up a little bit more stable. We'll see how it does when you're driving on the road. But quickly adding the lights and the switches is nice. You still have plenty of room to work your freedom panels if that's ever a question. So that is really good. And then we'll show you the final reveal of what the lights look like and the ability with these switches. Folks, thank you so much for watching today's video. I've been itching to get those yellow fog lights back on this Jeep, and it was a shame that I did not have auxiliary switches. So the Trigger 6-shooter is phenomenal, and I'm glad that I've got it installed on this guy, because that leaves me 5 more accessories to add more lights or other things that we need for the rig. I really appreciate you watching. If you guys are interested in any of the Oracle products or this Trigger system and you want to get 10% off, you can use the code LGOR at checkout to get that discount. It really helps this channel, but it will also help you get that 10% off. If you have any questions about the system that I didn't answer, please put those in the comments below. And if you thought this video was helpful, please give it a like, as that pushes that to new viewers. And if you're not a subscriber, which most of you watching these videos are not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, as we're trying to get to that 1,000 marker. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. See ya!